Okay, everyone. I'll just check there's no one hanging. No. Okay, for the people in the back, some of the slides, the writing, if it does get smaller, because I've changed it from a different format, from a Mac to a PC. So if the writing is small, please move forward, but also to know that I am told that all the information on these slides will be put on the BAC website. So if you don't want to write them down or can't see them or missed some of them, don't worry, you can get them on there. Okay. Hello, welcome. Some of you I saw earlier, but for those of you who don't know, my name's Sarah Matheson. I'm a 5-element acupuncturist. I've been treating for 25 years. I have a practice in London and a practice where I live in Hove. And we're going to do a great lesson today on one of the most, I think, one of the most exciting, powerful and important treatments that you can do. It's exploring the 7 dragons, and it's a treatment that with using 7 needles, we will release the inner dragons to devour the demons. Can I just have a show of hands who already uses possession IDs? Great, brilliant, fantastic. Okay. So we're just going to do a quick bite-sized history of where this actually came from. When I trained back in the day under J.R. Worsley, lots of people said it was Worsley acupuncture. This isn't the case. Thankfully, Jack bought it here, thank goodness, but he didn't just make it up. It's a very ancient treatment, and it originates from the 13 ghost points, and it's from the Susama, and he was a very wise academic who wrote volumes and volumes of encyclopedias of treatments, which they still use today. Which, if you're interested, you can go and hunt them down. But that is the first recording that we have of something similar to this treatment. The concepts, because at the time they obviously believed more than we do in today's world that there were demons. There were outside forces that could come in and take over one's own chi and energy. And it dates back to about the 6th or 7th century. For those of you who are really interested, there are, thank goodness, people who love doing this research, and there's great research on it. Bob Floors has quite a lot of research, and there were a few YouTube films that he did. And obviously we've got Peter Ekman, who did In the Footsteps of the Yellow Emperor, and he's done a lot of research. He did a talk at a BAC conference, I think about 5 years ago now. I don't know if anyone saw it. And it was about possession, but more on the pulses. But he's done a lot of history, and I know he'd be more than welcome if any of you want to go into that, to get in touch with him.
YouTube, which name is that?
Sorry?
YouTube.
On
which name I have to look?
Bob Floors.
Oh,
Bob Floors, yeah. So this was basically a treatment that was brought down in a verbal tradition. It was when, obviously, it would be apprenticeship from master to apprentice. And I got taught it by J.R. Worsley, who basically brought it here. And that's what J.R. used to say: when the spirits are not in residence, we're not alive. And he got taught it by Master Husu in the 60s, when he was over in China and Korea. doing his exploring, and then he brought it back to his colleges here and in the States. I was lucky once to have eaten fish and chips with JR in London, and he told me the story of when he first came across seeing this treatment done. He was in a hospital, and there was a patient who they just could not help. He was kind of traumatized, and everything they did they couldn't do. So they got this guy down from the hills to treat him, and treated him. And JR saw in front how quickly this person's energy came back, and he was very interested. And he went and hunted the guy down and spoke about it, and then took it back to Master Su. But it got lost within time, because like most of 5-element or traditional acupuncture, throughout the mid-40s and 50s, lots of these old traditional treatments got lost. So it's great that JR brought it back, really. So what is possession? It's quite a big question. What is possession? Simply, it's when your energy is not your own. It's when someone is not in control of their own chi. It's when the person is not available on the body, mind, or spirit. Or sometimes it's as simple, well, not simple when you're going through it, as being taken over by an obsession. It's a deep disturbance of the Shen. Everyone can get possessed. Anyone who's on the planet with a heartbeat can get possessed. In 5-element acupuncture, we're taught that possession is a real block to treatment, and that it's really important that this block gets cleared, because until we clear the block, other treatments won't get through. So as a 5-element acupuncturist, we really look to clear this possession treatment first. So, signs of possession. So you'll probably have come across a patient or someone in your life, or maybe yourself, where there's been deep emotional disturbance, where the behaviour is out of character, where someone might be self-destructive, they may be self-harming, lack of boundaries, so therefore they're open to things affecting them or hurting them on a body, mind and spirit level. Someone who might have suicidal thoughts or attempts. It can be even as simple as a patient who's been hearing voices. Or the patient has a feeling of being energetically influenced by another person, which could be where obsession comes in sometimes. Okay. So what causes possession? Lots of things. And I think in today's world, more and more things cause possession, really. But we'll just go through some. So usually it can be shocks, really. Definitely shocks to the heart or to the Shen. So things like heartbreak, death, it's a lovely list. Divorce, illness, a loss of home, definitely in today's world, financial security, insecurity, physical abuse and violence, accidents where there's a shock or a damage, drug abuse is very high up there, sexual abuse, mental abuse, all the addictions, we can take them all, they're up there. People that have experienced war or have been involved in terrorist attacks or anything that's affected them. Exposure to extreme climate factors. Engaging with the occult or religious occults or guru types. Exposure to unpleasant surroundings, prisons and hospitals. I'll put Westminster up there. Chronic long-lasting conditions, mental or physical illness. And then one that's quite understandable are patients that are suffering from traumatic stress. So how do we detect possession? We have some basic ways that we detect possession. One is the eyes. We look into the eyes to see whether we can make a connection with someone's Shen. It's a feeling when you look at someone, normally when you look in someone's eyes, you make contact. Even if someone doesn't want you or feels uncomfortable, you looking in their eyes, there will be a connection. When someone's possessed, you will find that connection won't be there. We've got a few extreme cases here, obviously. What else have we got? Oh, there's some. Can you see the eyes? Yeah.
The girl at the top on the right to the side.
The girl, this one? Well, it might just be the picture, but it's the thing where they look a bit glazy. Someone's eyes can be a bit glazy. They look kind of a bit darker than they should. You just feel like you can't penetrate them. These are pictures that a photographer took of men going to war, and they're the before and after pictures when they went to Kuwait. And these are the befores, and these are the afters. There's a kind of dullness in the eyes. It's as if the Shen's not there. There isn't that sparkle that you can get. There's like a flatness there. Yeah. So we look in the eyes, there'll be lack of Shen, and a feeling when you look into the patient that there's no one at home. You just can't get through. Also, there can be a lack of eye contact. Sometimes people won't, and it's not just because they feel vulnerable, they just will keep flicking. You can't make eye contact with them. They're kind of manic. As I say, don't worry, this is all down. I'm hoping you can download all this. So also a patient's behaviour is another way of detecting if someone's possessed. So obviously if it's a patient you know and then you feel their energy is different, then that's really easy. But if it's a new patient, which generally they are when they come to see you, they're the sort of patient where you can sit with them and you'll ask questions but you don't really feel you're getting any answers. Or you just don't feel like you're getting any rapport, you're just not getting through. It's like there's a glass up, or there's some kind of energeticness that isn't letting you connect. Have we had patients like that? Yeah. And then they may answer the questions and they don't really make much sense. They're kind of answering all over the place, really. They'll probably tell you as well. They'll probably tell you without knowing they're telling you. They'll probably say something like, oh, I've never really been the same since. Or I've just never felt me. They might tell you of maybe that they're obviously in addiction or they're obsessed. They may go on and on about some inappropriate lover or some relationship that's not healthy for them, and they're just stuck in it, and also they'll keep going over the same subject or the same thing. Do we know those sorts of patients? Yeah. There'll be a chaotic feeling with them. You know, you might not feel at ease with them. So this is just going over it again. So there's a loss of that patient-practitioner contact. It may feel like the patient's absent. And chaotic, and they may feel like they're all over the place. They actually say that sometimes. I'm all over the place, I'm not grounded. When you look at your notes after the TD, well, sometimes you get this with a water CF, but if you look at your notes after, you haven't actually got anything really. There's just bits. It doesn't make sense. And sometimes the energy in the room just doesn't feel great. There's like an undercurrent. Another way we detect is on the pulses. You'll find when you take the pulses that you probably get different readings all the time. So you take them once, then you go back and they're different. And you take them again and go back and they're different. Has anyone come across this? Yeah. Or whatever treatment you've done, it doesn't seem to make any difference. Or it changes and then it falls again. They're just not consistent. There's not that nice steady movement that you would expect. The pulses can also feel really chaotic. I personally feel agitated when I take a person's pulse that's possessed. Also with AE too, but I personally feel agitated, and I kind of find it hard to breathe sometimes, to get my breath when I'm taking them. You might have your own ways of feeling uneasy or feeling like you feel like you can't take them. In Texas, Peter Ekman is very much into detecting possession on pulses. He takes it to a way another level. And please, if you'd like to look up that, then you can get in touch with him. He's got some great notes on it. But to be quite honest, you can look at a possession very basically. The pulses just won't feel right. But there are ancient texts, they call it the chi wild, for they have a superficial pounding quality to them. So it's as if they're overworking. Okay. And again, you'll hear patients say sentences like, I was fine until I just feel so obsessed by. There's a darkness around me. These I've taken from my notes, actually. This person has taken me over. I cannot get the image out of my head. This is usually when, someone's been possessed by something that's happened. So it's really important that we clear this possession. As I mentioned before, in 5-element acupuncture, it's one of our major blocks. And it will hinder any further acupuncture treatment, we feel, if it's not treated. Sometimes if I get a patient in and I feel they are possessed, just by the way they're acting, I don't even bother taking their pulses. I get them, and I don't bother going on with this TD. I get them straight on the couch, and I would do this treatment. because I'm not going to make any contact with this patient. I'm not going to see them properly until I've cleared this possession. If the patient is possessed, it's going to make diagnosis of the CF very difficult with the colour, sound, odour and emotion. That's another factor that may make you think, is this person possessed? You may start seeing different colours. You may get yourself a bit confused as to what CF they may be. You may start going all around the houses. The long-time consequences of not clearing a possession, well, it's just not great. And what will happen is if you do more treatment on top of it, you're not going to get the results that you want. And I've found as well that some patients who have got possession and I've not cleared it for some reason or not detected it and I've done treatment on top of it, they come back feeling dreadful. They're the sort of patients that come back, saying never slept, felt awful. Sometimes they feel sick, nausea. Then you might want to question, did I not look at possession? Did I not see it? The reason being why you get loads of things like nausea and that chaoticness is because, as we'll see when we go through the points, they're a lot on the stomach meridian. And so if we keep on suppressing this chi that's inside, it can bring up those certain things like nausea. Headaches is one. So the treatment, there's 7 points. This is where the fun begins. There's 7 points of 7 dragons. And it's like unlocking the dragons. So this is like, I think, like a lock. You put the needles in to unlock the dragons. So therefore the needles all have to go in as one after the other. It's really important that we get every point. Because if we miss the point, we're not going to unlock. And the other dragons can't unlock. They all need to be unlocked together. So this is where point location does come in. And if you feel you haven't got the point, it doesn't matter. Just go back, redo the needle. You don't have to do them all. But if you haven't felt like you've made a connection in the energy, then please do. Go back and make sure you've connected. Does that make sense?
How do you feel that you make connection?
Well, you can feel it on the needle. And if you can't, hopefully the patient can tell you. Absolutely. Because they're quite strong. And this is where we don't go gentle, gentle. Our intention is we have to unlock these dragons. We want the possession cleared. And that's the intention that we go in with. Okay?
So if you say if you haven't got one of the points, then you take them all out and start
You don't
again.
have to take them all out, but you can, roughly we know sometimes what points we feel are a bit iffy, don't we? So just go back and redo those points.
Trying to get it out
Yeah,
of the body.
absolutely. And if it's a patient you know, or she's had lots of acupuncture, she can, or he will give you feedback. They'll say, oh, we've got that. And if not, then you've just got to keep on trying to feel it for yourself. But you will feel it. There will be. So we've got 7 internal dragons, and we've got 7 external dragons. The internal are in the front of the body, the external are at the back. So we generally start with the internal dragons, which is also known as IDs. I think in today's world, most people get internally possessed than externally possessed because of the world we live in. I'm sure if we went back, some people would get externally possessed because of the conditions they lived in. Harsh winters, fierce working, and today it's very different. We've got a lot of things that attack the spirit today. There's a lot of things that attack our mind and spirit. And so it's very often that nowadays we get more internal dragons. So the points are the master point by Ren 15. Some of you are probably needling this anyway, but it's just the point, I would say a couple of millimeters just under Ren 15 or CV 15. You will feel it. You will feel it. You will feel the men. It's there. It's quite strong. It's quite strong.
Is it actually on the xiphoid or below the xiphoid?
It's below.
Below the xiphoid.
Below the xiphoid. Below the xiphoid. The last time I did this lecture, we had a body, and I actually did a presentation of doing it. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to do that anymore without safe practice and health and safety. So, sorry, we've got to use our imaginations. So it's here. Then we've got stomach 25 here, level with the umbilicus.
Sometimes say more lateral.
Can be more, but it's.
I always put puncture from outside. So
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, yeah. It's stomach 32, 7.5 ACI outside, and stomach 41 at the ankle. Needling. These needles go in straight. These needles going straight. We don't go in side or at an angle. We go straight in. So they should look like they're sticking up when they're in the body. Yeah, so they have to stick up. Yeah. So well, if the body's lying down, you want the needles to be. So this is the body. You want the needles to be perpendicular. So with the stomach point, it's straight. So even if you get it, make sure you put the needle straight. Once you've hit the point, straighten it up. What depth? Well, obviously, when it comes to the master point, you won't have to go that deep. Sometimes you might have to a little, but you won't have to. On the thigh, you will. That can be quite deep. To be quite honest, go to the depth where you find the chi. This is really about hitting the chi.
It's completely horizontal.
It is, but you can just try and get the needles up as much as you can.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
they're straight as well.
Well, they're going to come a little bit out because of the body, but they shouldn't be like this. They should come as much straight as they can possibly be. Yep, you can use any needles that you want to use. Obviously not too thick, but...
Would you go for finer because it's more of a spirit type thing, or would you, because it's a stronger treatment, would you go for something a bit thicker?
No, I'd go with whatever you feel is going to do the job for you. What I would go with is intention. Okay, so even when you're point locating, really with your intention of I'm going to find this point and I'm going to hit all of the points. And so then what we do, once we've done our lovely point location, we're going to start from the top. So we start first with our CV or Ren point, 15, and then we start working our way down. And this is where it can get a little complicated. It doesn't have to, but if we learn it right first off, then we're okay. So we start from the top to the bottom. Hang on, I've got them here. Can you see that? It's a bit small. We start from the top to the bottom, and we needle right to left. So we put the right side in first. Okay. No, you do them, bilaterally. So stomach, 25, stomach.
Is there a hint of sedation on when you put them in, or is it just straight?
First of all, you put them straight in. Do not do any tonification, do not do any sedation, just make sure you've got the points and you put them in. And when we said earlier, if you don't feel you have, go back. It's not the end of the world, just go back and re-find the point again. Once they're all placed and you know you've got them, then we unlock the dragons. So we go back up to our top, because remember it's always top to bottom. We go to our top point and we gently, slowly just sedate. What we're doing is we're unlocking. This is where we unlock the combination. This is when you'll know as well if you haven't got the point, because you'll feel that there's no real grab on the needle. So this is another time that you can go back quickly and just go, oh, and just put it back again and just top and very gently sedate.
Sedate means?
Anti-clockwise. Not easy for me, I'm a dyslexic, I've got to think about this. Anti-clockwise. And then we leave them. And we let the dragons do their thing. And while we leave them, we keep taking the pulses, because you will feel a pulse change. You will feel a pulse change. They'll either really drop, or they'll come up. Something will happen, and it might not happen straight away. Just give it time. We leave. They can be in anywhere up to 20 minutes to half an hour. But you will find something will change if that person is possessed. So whether it's the pulses, whether you get eye contact with them, and suddenly you're making connection, suddenly you see there's Shen there, they may voice that something's different or suddenly start talking. And sometimes it's happened to me where they can actually talk about what it was that they may have been possessed about, or something around it that they had no consciousness of. Sometimes they go really calm. The patient can go very quiet. I've had patients cry, I've had patients laugh. It all depends how they are personally going to release. Sometimes there's no change at all. And you think, oh, well, I haven't got the points. But you will feel something, even if it's only on the pulses. There will be a change. And you will feel an energetic change in the energy. When you feel it's cleared, you go back to the top, because we always work top to bottom, and you slightly, gently tonify, which is now clockwise. So you go top, right, left, right, left. What we're doing now is we're putting the dragons away. We're locking them back. Letting them go back in to their sacred place. We've let them out to devour the demons. Now we're putting them back. The job's done. The job's done.
Sorry, I don't get this. What is the thing in your head? Are they even? Are they purified when they have been out of the body?
Well, this treatment only allows them to come out. We don't want them out all the time. These vicious, high demon dragons, Has anyone watched Game of Thrones? We want them back in. For them back in. Hopefully not for next time.
So what you're saying is the dragons is not the problem.
The dragons aren't the problem.
The dragons are the protectors, right?
The dragons are our protectors, yeah. The dragons will come out and devour the demons. Yeah.
Did you say that when you felt the change of whatever it was, then you would go back to the top? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Lock them. Obviously, lock and remove. The treatment's done. Lock it. Take the needles out. Yeah. Then in 5-element protocol, we would probably look for any more blocks, if there was any more blocks, and if there wasn't, we would do an aggressive energy drain. and then we would follow it up with some form of 5-element treatment afterwards. So this is quite a long treatment. This can be a long
Do
treatment.
that all in one treatment? The AE drain after?
Yeah.
And you do also the well points after the
Sorry?
aggressive energy points, you do the well points?
You can go to the source, but you can, yes, I would do, I would do a treatment, yeah.
So if you do the protocol and then leave it there without following up anything on that occasion, are you going, what's the upshot going to be?
I tell you why we do that, from a 5-element point of view, is that we've just released and given this person back their energy. We don't know how long they've been possessed, we don't know really we might not know what their possession was, but at the end of the day, they've reclaimed their energy. We've got to make sure that they don't get repossessed. And we've got to make sure that they're back in their energy in the best way they can be. So we make sure that everything's clean from it. That's why we do aggressive energy, and make sure the body's clean. And then we will do a nice treatment that will just give grounding. I always tonify heart 7, just on the left side, because I personally feel it just gives back control. Some people do spirit burial grounds, kidney 24, to just lock back in. Whatever feels right for you. Try not to over-treat though, they've had a big treatment. So it's something that's nice and grounding. But to put a spirit point in there to just say, you're back.
It's surprising that you talk about doing this AE treatment after such a big treatment. You then follow it up with an AE treatment. That's really surprising.
Yeah. Well, if time permits, I mean, this is if we have a clinic and time permits. You don't have to do it, but at the end of the day, I would get them back pretty soon if I hadn't done AE after that, because you would want this energy to be as clean as possible.
Get them back, well, like a week later.
I would get them back within a week, if I could, yeah. I would get them back within a few days.
So you're saying that you could, like, if you do this as a standalone, without understanding properly the AE, then you actually could do your patient a bit harm?
I don't think you'll do them harm.
Right.
But what has happened sometimes when there hasn't been a follow-up with another treatment is that they can go away and they can feel not great, because their energies come out and they're obviously now feeling they can feel the AE. Something might not be done. It needs to be tidied properly. So it's always good to get them in and do the AE. If you can't do it then, do it as soon as.
I asked one of the practitioners I work with to do, I did some work back energy last time, just so that I can know how it was feeling. And then I went on holiday, and I had no reason to think I would have any possession whatsoever. And I didn't recognise myself on holiday. My mood was completely ridiculous all over the place. Until when I got back off holiday, I then had AE, and I had to have it twice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, it can mask AE, that's right, it can mask AE, because you've got this treatment that's kind of done this big inner clearing, and then it can tell you what's layered on top. You will start to feel what's been layered on top. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not following.
That's okay.
AE,
It's aggressive energy, so it's points of the yin points on the back shoe points, the associated effect points for 5-element. Yeah, we'll do that after. Yeah.
The only other thing was a slide that said that if I had somebody who's hearing voices or suicidal, because to mention I think they should definitely be referred to a GP anyway.
Absolutely. But you've got them there, haven't you? So before they get to a GP, which probably take ages, you could do this treatment and then they could go feeling a little better. Yeah, but absolutely, absolutely. Now, you may do all this lovely work and they still may be possessed. Sorry, I will take the question. Yes.
Sorry, Sarah, just to clarify, yes, so if the possession has appeared, you just put the needles out when it's all 25.
You tonify and you take the needles out. If it hasn't cleared, we're going to go through what we're going to do now. So,
So can I just double check? So do you tonify and then take out, or will you tonify and then take them out?
you tonify, take out, tonify, take out. Yeah. So then, you've done this lovely treatment, and they're still possessed. So there's a couple of things here. One is they weren't, and they've got themselves possessed again, which can happen. I had a patient who was in a very abusive marriage, and every time she went back, she got possessed. It could be that you didn't get the points, so you may want to recheck that one. Or it could be that it's not internal dragons, it's external dragons. So we do external dragons. And these points are found on the back of the body. And these are do D or GV20, bladder 11, bladder 23, and bladder 61. That should read kidney correspondence there. Yeah, absolutely. So it's do 20 or GV20, bladder 11, bladder 23, and bladder 61. And we do exactly the same as we did with the IDs. We start at the top, work down to the bottom, and we do right to left. This treatment is better with a patient sitting up, because you can get to the points easier, but you might like to have them lying flat. But they might be there for a good 10, 20 minutes, half an hour, so sometimes it's best to get them sitting on the couch with perhaps their feet rested on something.
Not face down.
If you want to, it's up to you. Whichever you find easier for you and the patient. And then we do the same, we keep taking the pulses, we see all the changes, just like the IDs. And then when we feel it's changed, we do the same again as we did at the front. You tonify and remove, tonify, and out, and take all the needles out.
So you do the sedation?
You do the sedation. You're doing everything you did on the IDs. The only thing that's different are the points. The same protocol. If you want to, yep. Some patients tonify and close the hole with their finger.
When do you choose this external?
You choose this external if the IDs don't work, and if in their history it might be something that you think is external. So, sometimes a patient, and I have only ever had this once, said, I feel like there's an energetic on my back. But that's like one-off. It can be an external thing, so it could be like anything that comes from outside. It can be severe weather conditions. It could be trauma. Perhaps there was an accident and there's physical trauma. Sometimes it can be where there's been trauma to the head. Anything that you feel might actually affect the back of the body.
Would that include drugs then?
Yeah, that would include drugs. That would include drugs.
If it was drugs, would you do the EDs?
To be quite honest, if it was drugs and it's pretty bad, I would do both. I would do IDs, EDs.
And would you regard, say, abuse as an external?
Yes, it could be, absolutely. And that's what I mean. Sometimes they are possessed, but it's not, we haven't got the right possession. But in my experience, and I've done a lot of possession over 25 years, in my experience, it is mainly IDs. I think I've probably done about 20 EDs over 20 years, but I've done many, many more IDs. because of the connection with the Shen.
When you take the needles out, do you start from the bottom or the top?
Always the top.
You take them out, starting at the top.
Yeah. Everything's always top to the bottom, right to left.
Have you ever had a very extreme reaction where, you know, you really pushed somebody over the edge, they couldn't take, having the dragons unleashed?
No, I haven't. I've had some strong reactions while they're being done, but I've never had someone where they asked them to be taken out, or it was so bad I had to take them out. No.
Can I just, like the whole possession thing, we're literally saying something that's not them is in them, on them. And that is spirit-based, Shen-based, Shen someone else.
Can be.
Sarah, can I be a live case study here?
Be a live case study.
So shall I stand up?
Yes.
So when I was studying acupuncture and I didn't know about possession, I had a very traumatic miscarriage quite late on, and went to my acupuncturist. Several weeks later, I'd sort of hit quite a bad self-destruct patch that I thought was just grief. And I sat with my acupuncturist. I'd been seeing her for a few years, and I said to her at one point, I literally said these words, it's like there's good me here and there's a bad me talking that I'm listening to. And she did the possession treatment, and it was amazing, and I felt like myself again, and it really transformed. Yeah, the grief just wiped me out. I couldn't handle it, so I checked out.
Yeah.
That's
No, absolutely, and it can be something like that. It can be very emotional. Yeah.
So I was just going to say, thank you for sharing that.
Right.
If it is some sort of external influence that is then being dealt with, is the theory that these dragons consume that, or have we then got something in the room that is a risk to us?
Well, that's what I'm coming on to next.
I just wondered in terms of patient management, how you, like, if you explain anything to about the process and what kind of language you might use.
Okay, that's a very good question. Well, I wouldn't say you're possessed. Yeah, I wouldn't say you're possessed. You don't really have to tell them. You know, as far as they're concerned, you're doing a treatment. And if you want to say something, I sometimes say to some patients who ask, or if they've felt something during the treatment, I say this treatment is very good for just making you feel like your energy's yours again.
Can I share an experience?
Please do.
So I recently had a patient, probably about a month ago, and I'd been seeing her for some time, and she was often alluding to this trauma. And I just, she was a very sensitive woman, and I didn't feel that I wanted to push and ask what this trauma was. And I didn't have any idea what it was, but I knew that it was time to sort of, my treatments with her weren't going any further, so I decided to do IDs. And I was quite frightened of it really, because we'd been a bit sort of, I was just, oh my God, I'm going to do IDs. And I've been in practice for a while now. I think it was the first time I've ever done it. So, so we did it, and afterwards I was expecting, you know, something to happen, or are you okay? And she said, yeah. Got off the bed, finished up with the treatment, practically carried her to the door because I was so worried about what, you know, what had happened with her. And then she left, and I thought, oh, that was, you know, nothing. So the next week she came in, and I didn't do any of the things which is really interesting that you said afterwards. The next week she came in, she sat down, and instead of having this quiet voice, she was very loud, and she said, and I'm so angry about my rape, and she just went the whole thing. She'd been raped when she was 22, and it was just extraordinary.
Mm.
But what I didn't do was finish off with any of those things. She's continued to make lots of progress, but I'm just wondering whether we're slipping back a bit.
Right.
So, And this is made me wonder if I maybe need to redo it. And
You
then
can redo it.
do
I mean,
AEs.
absolutely. Listen, as far as possession goes, if you, which I know you all do here, because we all do safe practice, you're not going to hurt a patient. So all it's going to do is use some needles and take up a bit of your time. But it's not going to make any difference. That's, so if you do feel your patient may be possessed, do it.
Do it again.
Do it again. Because people can get repossessed, especially with something that's such a deep trauma. It can go deep and it has many layers. So I would definitely re-go again. Yeah, absolutely. And then follow it with, I know it's difficult, but get them back. If you can't do it all in one session, do your aggressive energy, see if there's any more blocks, and really go to those spirit points that you think might really help her. Yeah.
But you would go for the ID again rather than the external,
Yeah.
although it's an outside thing which obviously this affects
Oh,
deeply
it's
within.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I see where you're coming from. I mean, if you wanted to do it and you got the time, you could do it. You could do the EDs too. You could do both.
What in one treatment?
You could do both in one treatment. JR used to do it, and I did one with JR once. In fact, I did one with JR on a pregnant woman, actually.
Really? What did you do? Stomach 25?
We did stomach 25, but we didn't go that deep. But we didn't have to. The energy. I did possession on a pregnant woman, and then we went on and did AE. And I'd been treating this lady. Well, hence she got pregnant. But I was treating this lady for about 3 years beforehand. So I'd done all the AE, and I'm someone who goes back and I personally do AE a lot. I go back every now and again and I revisit AE. But because we cleared the possession, up come this AE, and we had the points in, and at one point she said she wanted to vomit. And I'll never forget, JR just came and just handed her the waste paper thing and said, "Much better out, dear, for you and the baby," as she vomited. And she felt wonderful, afterwards, once she, cleared all of that stuff. So it isn't something to be scared of. I think sometimes possession, I don't know if it's taught that or we take it on, that it's quite a scary thing and we're going to be releasing voodoo. It isn't like that. It can be very, very on a more basic level. It's a block to treatment. It needs to be cleared. It really is a block to treatment. I can't stress that more. Even if you're not a 5-element practitioner, you could then go on and do what you feel is a clearing in your own system. But I put good money that if your patient is possessed, you will not get the treatment that you would expect, or you don't get that nice growth that you expect, considering what you're actually doing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, as Columbo said, just one more thing. So, always stay in the room. There are schools of thought where, leave all the windows open because the energy is going to go out, and remove yourself from the room. Please stay with your patient because, it's 9 times out of 10 you probably won't witness anything, a change with them. But there will be that one patient where you will see a change. And you need to be there. You need to be there to support them or give them the tissues or reassure them. So please stay in the room.
Sarah, how do you protect your energy? Is there the risk that
Well, we're going to come on to that. Yeah, we'll come on to that. It's a very good question, yeah. Yet again, it's not great to mention the word possession. Because, loads of people have very different thoughts and feelings about possession, and it's just not good to give them that vocabulary, really. Always allow time for this treatment. It's not one of those that you can rush, really, because you won't feel happy about it. You'll feel like you just haven't done it right. So give yourself, and if you feel they are possessed and you haven't got the time in your diary, get them back. If they've been possessed this long, another couple of days or a week isn't going to make much difference. So make sure that there's time in your diary for them and you don't feel rushed as a practitioner, okay? Because I think sometimes we feel a bit that. Yes, you can say you're doing a clearing treatment, that's quite nice. They like to think that things are being cleared. Yeah, try not to fit this in. And try not to do it when you're tired. You know, don't put this in at the end of the day after you've seen a whole day of practice. You know, try and put them in your diary when you know that you can deal with it as well. And locate and mark points, as we know. Yes, locate and mark points, I think, because if you haven't got the point, then it's easier to go back and change it. And I always mark the points for IDs, and patients don't mind. They don't, and especially if it's the first treatment they've ever had, which for some of them it is. So this is the first treatment I sometimes do on someone. They've never had acupuncture, and this is what they get. So it's quite nice that they just lie. It's a nice treatment to lie down, relax. Yeah. Any questions before I go on to answer your question? Well, try to. Just try to get them in as much as you can. They're meant to be sticking up so you know you've got them and they're not hanging. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that originally the external dragons were taught one treatment was with depression and the other treatment was without depression?
Yes, you were. That's right. That was taught in Leamington. I think that's been diluted with time. But I think, to be quite honest, if someone's possessed, they're possessed. And if it's depression, it's depression. So it's up to you whether you start externally or internally. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So after IDs, you do EDs, and then you mentioned clearing blocks. Would that be EDs?
The blocks could be, well, you see, once you've cleared that, blocks might then show on pulses.
Sure.
Things like exit and entry blocks, husband-wife.
So you do all your
you'd have to
initial
clear
block
them
clearing in
too.
one go, one treatment?
Well, if you can, yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean, it's a big treatment. And sometimes the blocks don't show, they might show when they come back. You know, sometimes the blocks don't show maybe until they come back or a couple of times afterwards. But blocks might appear after you do a possession.
So just on that, would you skip the EEs, do AE and then close on heart 7 and then wait and see what
Yeah,
came back?
absolutely.
And then would you clear the EEs again and then do AE?
To be quite honest, if I didn't think I got the possession, I would do EDs and then I'd do the AA. But it's completely up to you, as long as you get them back and clear the possession.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best thing. Yeah. There was a question here.
It was just, I'm a fairly new practitioner,
Yeah.
and so probably a little bit overcautious.
Yes.
I feel like there's a patient who I've treated a couple of times, and her kind of main presenting issue is a hip pain. And it's just like I maybe feel some sort of ethical dilemma to kind of do this. I know that she's had previous trauma, to treat her in this way, how to kind of present it to her almost, because I feel like I should warn her in some way about what could happen.
I don't think you should warn her.
Right.
Because something might not happen. And so why get someone who's really anxious more anxious? Really? Because she comes for acupuncture, you're just lying her on a table, which she would do at some point, and you're just putting needles. You know, you don't have to tell her what it's for or what it's about, do you? Or do you?
I don't know. That's the kind of my dilemma. I mean, I don't want to freak her out by suggesting, because then that can lead her to feel. But you know, what if she has a strong reaction to it, and I've sort of, prepared her for, to have to.
Well, I think if you're possessed, whether you've got a bad hip or a bad ankle, you're going to feel better once that's possessed, once that's cleared, even if your hip still hurts. But you're going to feel better in yourself, especially if you've been in pain with that, because pain can bring on possession. People in intense pain can bring on possession too. So I think it's a treatment to do.
So just prepare, or not even prepare, but explain that I'm going to do some clearing.
Well, you don't even
Clearing
have to
treatment.
say that. Just say, I've got a lovely treatment for you today that isn't gonna, just because I'm not putting the needles around your hip doesn't mean to say I'm not treating your hip. I'm going to treat it a different way today. Give her that. Yes, yes.
I'm more originally TCM,
Yeah.
so I'm quite happy doing an evening drain and everything, but then clearing the blocks that will come up in my own TCM way is fine as well.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
They're possessed, so
Absolutely.
get rid of it and then
Absolutely.
treat it the way you normally would.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question here.
When I was taught IDs, I was told that if there was depression with it, that you could use 1.1 sun under stomach 36. Is that true?
I don't know that one. I've never been treated that. But you've used it, have you?
Yeah, I've used it.
And has it worked? Fantastic. Great. Great. Brilliant.
I just wanted to mention an experience that I had
Yes.
doing ED. And it was
Do you mind
only-
standing, just so the back can hear you?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
It's the only time I ever did it because of what happened.
Ah.
So I had a patient whose husband had committed suicide. Okay. And they were very close, but he was depressive, manic depressive and so forth, and he killed himself. And then for 4 years, she felt he was there all the time, with her. And she basically could not get on with her life because he was always there as far as she could feel. And I thought, this is a perfect case for ED. So I put the needles in, and she was laying there, and then suddenly she starts crying and crying, and she's face down, and then she pulls her head up, and she's looking like this, and she's crying and sobbing, and quite an intense experience. I'm watching this. And then, then she calmed down, and okay, take out the needles, I said, what happened? You looked like you were looking at something. She said, well, I could see you. I could see it for the first time in these 4 years. I could see it. And he was dancing, and because she was laughing, and she was really laughing, and she had her head poked up and was like this because she had the face thing. And she said, yes, and she said, when he was alive, he danced all the time. He was always dancing. And she said, and then he said, goodbye. He goes, goodbye, right? And I said, wow, okay. And she felt like utterly relieved.
Yeah.
But afterwards,
Up came the grief.
no, after she left, my partner and I were sitting there in our living, because I treat my house.
Ah.
And we're sitting there, and
Oh,
and I said,
Someone else do it.
my partner said, there's a funny feeling in this room now. Did you do something in this room? It feels funny. And I was like, I explained what happened, and this patient who I knew her outside of being, because it was very early in my treating days.
Mm.
So she came back and she said, yes, she couldn't feel him with her anymore. She could feel him when she came back to my flat.
So he was hanging out at
He
yours?
was there. And he was very hollow. It's not that he was like, there was like wind or anything. You could just feel that there was someone else there. And she could much feel that he was no longer with her. And so then I'm a Buddhist. I called my teacher and so forth, so, because
to
as
clear.
Buddhists, we believe that there are spirits who are external and so forth. And so the teacher recommended that I burn sage.
Yeah.
And so I walked around, and that you're communicating and being very kind, but explaining, and I'm talking to the air, explaining with my sage, walking around the room, saying, it's time for you to move on. You can't stay here. You just can't stay here.
Get your own place.
Basically. But I said,
Or pay rent.
It's okay for you. Yeah. It's my Buddhist teacher, give me some
Yeah.
the sage, and just explain and ask him to look for a way out. That there's a way, if you look, you can find your way out, but please, you can't stay here. And he laughed. but it was the very last dragon. Because internal dragons I've probably done literally thousands of times by now.
Right.
To nearly every patient I have. But Edie, that was it, one time.
Okay.
But just be careful. If it's that thing, if it is actual possession of an external spirit
Yeah.
who's dead, be careful.
Hang on. Yeah.
That's the thing that sticks with you. Yeah.
Is that in relation to that?
Yes.
So you can come here.
Can you hear? Hold on, I got the door.
No,
Hold on.
in relation to that experience. Oh, I don't know. You should shout. I'm from the north. But in relation to that experience, I just wanted to ask, because I'm not the 5-element practitioner, but is that the external dragons? Is that rather than the internal dragons? You said you had on a face and you did the back.
That was
treatment.
the external
So
dragons.
external
That was the
dragons is spirits.
No, it can be both.
Oh.
It can be both, yeah. You can sometimes get that with IDs as well. It doesn't make, it's just that's where that was. That's, yeah.
Can I just ask this, so whilst you're doing the treatment, not doing 5 elements, do they stay still? Would you get any
Generally they
adverse feedback
do,
reaction?
some don't, some do.
So have
Some.
you got to worry about, what's happening with the needle work?
Well, that's why you stay there. That's why you don't leave your patient in the room, you stay with them. As a 5-element practitioner, we do anyway, but you wouldn't go and treat another patient, you would stay with that patient, because if you found that they were having some reaction, and if it wasn't great, you could always remove the needles. I mean, it doesn't, it's fine, but to be quite honest, I mean, that's only ever happened to me once, and it is extreme. I mean, you probably might go through your whole life as an acupuncturist and never come across that one.
So if the reaction's really extreme and they're very agitated and not staying still, so and you feel like you need to take them out.
Well, it all depends why you feel you might want to take them out. And I'm just giving you this. Is it because we're scared as a practitioner? Or, yeah, absolutely. Or is it because they are uncomfortable going, get them out, get them out? And I tend to think a bit like JR. If they said get them out, I would first say, can you keep them in just for a little bit longer? I sometimes say, can I count to 30? And generally they say yes, and I can, and it's gone. But if you feel it is really distressing, then obviously take them out. But sometimes I feel like anything, is it our uncomfortableness with it rather than the patient's uncomfortableness? Because if they're releasing, then it's great they're releasing. It's just obviously...
Sometimes they don't want to come out, do they?
Sometimes the needles don't want to come out. If they don't want to come out, don't force them. It says they want them to still be in there. So sometimes they will be quite difficult to come out. Leave them, because to me it says it's not finished.
It happened to me in my 3rd year.
Did it?
I put it in and the needles just would not come
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Frightened me to death.
Did it?
Frightened me to death.
Okay.
It just didn't matter, I picked up and everything, and everything come with it. And had to leave it there, I think,
Yeah.
3 hours.
Wow.
This patient had to
I've never had 3 hours. I've had about another 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, it just wouldn't come out.
Yeah.
Is it in the back two ones?
Sorry?
Which point wouldn't come out of the back?
The front, the
The
round,
front
the
ones
round.
wouldn't come out.
The
Yeah,
round.
they just wouldn't come out.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, in Nikki's case, it all happens right at the moment that she, in treatment. In mine, nothing happens, but clearly did when she came back. Is that normal? Is that in your practice? You've obviously done lots of times. Is it to have those two?
It's more normal that you might not feel sometimes much. Some of you might go away and get a bit disappointed now because we've had some wonderful... and sometimes you just think, well, nothing happened. They didn't even cry. You feel a bit let down. And nothing happens. They come back and say, how did you feel? Well, I didn't feel much. What do you mean you didn't feel much? And that could be, as I said before, you've missed it. Or perhaps it might not have been there. Or perhaps it was, but it's subtle. All we know is that when we do our treatment from then onwards, it changes. We get to see the results we like. So somewhere, something's changed. Yeah. So was a question.
Yeah, I'm very new practitioner, and I really want to ask your opinion about something because it's about external spirit as well.
Yeah.
So I have a patient who, the story goes further back, but when she was about 24 or 5, she stayed at her parents' new house, which is a really old house, and she actually saw a spirit in her room, and she ran out really scared, and she ran away from the room, never went back there. And she used to describe that the spirit is really angry when she is not there, because her mum would go and pick things, put toiletries in the bathroom, and she'll go back in the room and everything would be knocked down and so on and so on. Eventually she moved away, she got pregnant, and she lost the baby, a really traumatic detached placenta, 20 weeks. And she described the second it happened, and she always felt presence, and when it did happen, she could see the spirit there in the room with her. So this is where the need for advice comes. She's pregnant again now. She's only about 11 weeks, but she has obsessive thoughts, and she can hear something talking to her, and she's quite convinced that she's going to lose the baby. And now knowing what you guys have been sharing, would you touch that? Because honestly, when she talks about it in the room, I get shivers, and I'm not a spiritual person. My background is science, so for me it's a bit, I don't even know what to do with this. But I get scared when she talks about it.
Just to say,
so I feel something in the room.
This patient, it utterly changed her life. Completely
the question
and utterly
is, in
shifted
pregnancy,
her life.
would we dare touch that, and how dangerous it is for me, because I get scared.
But the sage works.
Well, I would say then you're not the right practitioner to do that.
Where do I send her? I'll be happy to send her somewhere.
Send her to a practitioner who's happy to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably one who's a bit experienced as well, who's happy to do it.
Yeah. I'm quite happy to send her somewhere.
Yeah.
Would you dare do that?
Yeah,
It depends where she is. There's some really good people that have done a lot of work with, is it Chris Northland?
Yeah.
Liza Wilmot.
Who works in mental health.
People who've got mental health backgrounds and have come into acupuncture.
Yeah.
They're literally, these treatments are part of their bread and butter. It's even sort of looking in the college clinic.
Yeah.
Every single person that came through who was Liza's patient, who I trained with, everybody was possessed. And it reflects her mental health background. And she was saying it was life-changing for her. And if she'd have known about possession treatments when she was working earlier in her career, it would have been life-changing for a hell of a lot of patients. So,
I think for her it would be better for the pregnancy if something is done.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. There's a practitioner in Norfolk, and he treats a lot of vets, ex-war, and he's done amazing things. And all he does is possession. He doesn't treat them with anything else. He doesn't do follow-up treatments or anything. He just does this treatment, and the actual results and research have been amazing. Yeah. Yes, I will get you for properly, and I will definitely give you that, because he sometimes also would like to volunteers to help with the vets. Oh, fantastic. Oh my goodness, we'll definitely get you his name and contact him.
Do you have publications from that?
Sorry, darling?
There are publications from that?
Yes, there are, because he was here 3 years ago at the conference. Yes, it's yes. And he actually did a whole lecture on it. And that's why I actually did this lecture, because he didn't actually tell anyone the points, and he didn't actually tell anyone the procedure. So people were coming out going, what was it? And I was like, well, it was the 7 dragons. But he has done amazing work, and he only does that. He doesn't do any follow-ups, he doesn't do any, just that. Yeah. Yes.
With mental health issues, I mean, there's someone I think who's kind of schizophrenic. Is there a danger in doing one of these treatments for someone like that?
Well, I don't know if it's a danger, to be quite honest, and that's where I think as practitioners, sometimes it can be our fear, because we don't want to, unleash something. I think that there's caution, and I would definitely not like to work on someone in that way if I thought there was no other support for that person. So I'd make sure they're still in some mental health system, they're still seeing a doctor, or I wouldn't just do it on my own with that, just in case. And I would say, tell your other people who you're in your health support that you're having acupuncture. and that this sometimes may make you feel a bit more emotional than others. I would say in that way, to be quite honest, yeah. I would make sure I got support though, wasn't on my own.
One last question.
Yeah.
You mentioned in a nutshell, what do you understand by AE?
What do I understand?
When do you use it? What does it do?
I use AE before I treat anybody. That's the first treatment I do if they're not possessed. It is a nice shower inside. It cleans. So I get a lovely clean, I get a canvas and I get an honest picture of what's going on the pulses, yeah.
I would say it's like getting the cookies off the browser.
There you go. There was a question here somewhere. Yes, I'll go, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have a story.
Okay, can I just take a question, but I will come back.
It was more of a relating to the lady who was talking about her pregnancy
Yeah.
and the situation that you just described about ensuring that people have
Yeah.
support. With that lady, I would want her to see medical practitioner
Oh, absolutely.
and get support before you do anything.
Well, I'm hoping if she had that sort of trauma of a miscarriage, she must be in some miscarriage support somewhere. Her doctor.
To ensure that that's
Yeah,
in place.
absolutely, absolutely. Is there another
question? Was how does the practitioner protect themselves?
Okay, we will get to that, but we've got this lovely story.
The story?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been a dyed-in-the-wool TCM practitioner for the last 30 years. But in the early years of practice, I remember doing the internal dragons on a patient. And it was probably about the time that The Exorcist. So I didn't warn them what was going to happen, and I just opened the window, and I did the 7 internal dragons, and I just twiddled the last one, and suddenly the woman started to make this weird noise. She started going, and then slowly, this is true, I'm not making it up, slowly she sat up, slowly, sitting, not using her arms, and when she'd sat up, she went, it's come out of me. And then she fell back. I just cried.
Right.
And I've never done the treatment since. But I mean, after hearing today's lecture, I mean, I am encouraged. So yeah, there you go.
Well, you've obviously got talent.
Being in that state. It's horrible being in that state when you really aren't available to yourself. So if you think it's there, you must help them.
That's good.
If somebody's already got a diagnosis in like Western medicine of bipolar, would you do it for that?
Ah, yes. Well, I do see quite a lot of mental health patients with bipolar, manic depression. And yes, I would, because, one of the things that causes possession is, medication. If you're on these heavy, which they are, antidepressants or heavy, it really helps. But I would yet again say what we said. I'd make sure that I'm not the only person they're seeing.
I think if they've been diagnosed with bipolar in like Western medicine, because that might come back from that kind of background, to me it translates to what we've been talking to this afternoon, doesn't it? As there's 2 people in there.
No, absolutely.
Rent-free, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. But I would make sure that, you had other people in your system to support you, that's all.
Because some of the drugs they use for that, they pack a punch, don't they?
They do pack a punch. And also sometimes you don't know what's them and what is the drug. So when we were saying about the shen in the eyes, if they're on heavy meds, sometimes we don't know what's what. You had a question.
Yeah, is there a particular reason for the stomach points and why they're indicated? They have this kind of effect? Because I have had experiences with patients giving them standard treatment where they've had some kind of possession experience where they feel like something has been lifted, taken away, but with just standard acupuncture.
Great.
But I'm intrigued why the stomach points have that effect.
I think the stomach, and I'm not 100% sure, to be quite honest. I'm more of a person who gets on with it rather than questions too much, which probably sometimes isn't the best. But I think if you look in, I think it's more to do with what the stomach represents, which is the grounding, and it's like unearthing, and it's that real root, because it's right in the root of and the plexus, and so I think that is more what it's like. But if you look in the ghost points, you might find more there, because that's where they originate from.
There was a man, I don't know, about 20 years ago called Yamamoto, and he developed an electrical machine for measuring the meridians.
Mm.
And he was also interested in things psychic, and he talked about how when a psychic is being, into a medium
connected.
sort of, and it's, in my experience, it's often the earth types, the spleen and stomach types.
It is.
He said that it happened through the stomach room.
Wow, okay.
That was where the possession.
Right, isn't that interesting? And what's interesting is I don't treat a lot, but I've had in the past quite a lot of patients who are psychic, and they do psychic work, channeling or tarot reading or wherever they open up. And not all of them, but generally they come because of their weight. And I think partly it's because they hold weight, and it is their stomach and their spleen. It's as if they need to be rooted or something. It's to do with rooting them when they're opening themselves up on that psychic energy.
It's the third chakra. It's power.
Power. Yeah.
How do we protect them?
So how do we protect? After all that, how do we protect ourselves? We run. Well, to be quite honest, I mean, we've heard some great stories today, and I love it because obviously we've heard some really good stories today, and that isn't going to be the norm. It's great. So there are different degrees of protecting yourself. I always say protect yourself with whatever you feel you actually connect with. So if you do have a sense of a spiritual path, like your Buddhism, or use that too. Saging is a great one. If you haven't got any sage, moxa. Moxa is a great clearer. Open the windows. Salt, rock salt, also is a good thing to put a bowl in the room. Make sure as well, after a day like that, you actually go home and wash. Get rid of the conditions. I would wash your hands up to your elbow to get rid of the conditions before you even leave the treatment room. Partly that's why some practitioners wear a white coat, because they feel that gives them that psychic protection or that barrier. I think whatever works for you, to be quite honest. But I think it's important you find something that works for you, whatever that is.
So you would like burn the sage or the moxa afterwards, or
yes, you would.
Not during the treatment.
Some people do. Some people who use it and also are into their more shamanic might do it at the time. I personally do it afterwards. Once they've left the room, I open, I smudge.
So you do?
I do. I personally do. And I do lavender. I have a lavender spray that I spray.
I was just going to say, Michael Harner spoke the way of the shaman.
Yes.
There's quite a lot of stuff that parallels with this as well. So he talks about the difference between an intrusion and an external attachment, which kind of in my head I've always figured it into as external attachment. But then these kind of like protective mechanisms as well, which are quite interesting.
Great. Okay. So this is the guy. It sounds like he's got a good book, and it is. I mean, it's such an ancient tradition. This, I don't think it's just in acupuncture. I think this goes way back. It's very shamanic. Very shamanic. It's good for. I think it's good for everything. Anything that takes you away from your energy. Really. So, do we think we're possessed out? Are we ready to hit the bar and get possessed? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.